He values me more than you ever could. You're too dull for a journey like this. I'm Ethan, 46, and I've been in marketing strategy in San Diego for almost 20 years. That morning, I stood in our driveway with car keys while my wife, Vanessa, packed. Her harsh words into sharper phrases than any knife I've ever felt. Behind her was Alec, her personal trainer, 6'2", tanned like a magazine cover, wearing sunglasses likely pricier than my monthly car payment. He didn't even have the courtesy to look ashamed. He just stood there, smug, as if he'd won something. I had spent 3 months planning this trip to Europe. 7 days, 5 countries, everything she'd ever expressed a desire to see, every restaurant she'd saved on her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the Louvre at sunrise, dining on the Seine, that little vineyard in Tuscany she'd seen in a travel magazine. I'm still going, she said, adjusting. Her designer purse's strap, but not with you. She wasn't even taking luggage. I had assumed she'd forgotten something inside, maybe needed my help with bags. Instead, she stood there as if doing me a favor by explaining why another man deserved the trip I had arranged for her. 14 years of marriage, 14 anniversaries. I'd never missed one, never forgotten a birthday, never failed to notice changes in her hair or new purchases. I supported her through 2 career shifts, cheered on her fitness journey, even paid for personal training sessions that apparently included benefits I hadn't expected. The itinerary is here, I said, handing her the silk envelope I'd prepared the night before. My voice was steady, which surprised me. The flight leaves in 2 hours. She took it without meeting my eyes. Alec already had his ticket. Same flight, the same flight. She had organized this, bought him a seat on the plane I'd booked. For the trip I designed with money earned from working 60-hour weeks to give her everything she desired. I nodded once, got back in my car, and drove away. What she didn't know was that I had funded everything through my business account. Every hotel reservation, every dinner booking, every private tour guide, all under my name, linked to my identification secured with 2-factor authentication, accessible only via my phone. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw them heading toward the Uber I'd summoned for us. Alec had his arm around her waist as if he owned her. Perhaps he did, but he didn't own the trip. I met Vanessa when I was 32, still believing love could conquer all. She worked at a downtown gallery, speaking about art in ways that made ordinary paintings sound like they held secrets. I'd stop by after work just to hear her voice, to watch her hands as she explained why certain artists mattered. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony that was mostly her friends. My parents had passed when I was in my 20s, and I'd struggled to maintain friendships once work consumed my life. Vanessa became my entire world. Looking back, I built my marketing consultancy from scratch, starting in our apartment's spare bedroom, taking on small clients while she pursued her gallery career. As the business grew, I moved to an office, and as it expanded further, I hired employees. Every success meant I could offer her more. Better restaurants, nicer vacations, the house in Mission Hills she fell in love with during one of our Sunday drives. At some point, she stopped discussing art and began talking about what we lacked. The friends who traveled more, couples with larger houses, women whose husbands took them to places that looked better on social media. "You work too much," became her favorite complaint. "You never want to do anything fun." But I was working for her, for us. Every client meeting, every late night at the office, every weekend spent building something that could sustain the life she desired. I thought she understood that. The personal training began 6 months ago. "I need to feel good about myself again," she'd said, 3 sessions a week at some upscale gym in La Jolla, $200 a session. But she appeared happier, more confident, and I was glad she found something that made her smile. Then came the longer sessions, the post-workout coffee meetups, the new clothes seemingly designed to showcase her progress, the phone calls she took in another room, speaking in hushed tones about training schedules and nutrition plans. I began to notice things, how secretive she had gotten with her phone, how she'd light up when it buzzed with certain notifications, how she started mentioning Alec in conversations, little remarks about his travels, insights, and appreciation for finer things. Alec says European hotels are completely different from American ones, more authentic. Alec thinks people our age don't travel enough. We get too comfortable. Alec has been to Paris 7 times. He knows all the places tourists never find. I should have seen it coming. I should have recognized that she wasn't just training her body, she was training herself to desire someone else's life. But I was too busy planning our anniversary trip to notice she'd already chosen her travel companion. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after leaving the house, motionless, thoughtless, just breathing. The envelope with their boarding passes remained on my passenger seat. I'd printed 2 copies of everything, as I always did. Backup plans for backup plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Don't wait up. Flight might be delayed." Flight might be delayed, as if she were visiting her sister rather than stealing our anniversary trip with another man. That's when it struck me. Not anger, not betrayal, not the crushing weight of 14 years flushing away. Just clarity. Cold, perfect clarity about who I had married and who I had become. I spent our entire relationship trying to earn her love through gestures, gifts, and grand romantic plans. But love wasn't something you earned. It was something you gave or didn't give. Vanessa had stopped giving it long before she met Alec. I drove to my office and opened the trip folder on my computer. Every reservation, every confirmation number, every meticulously planned detail, all secured through Zentron Global's business account with me as the primary cardholder and sole authorized user. The hotel in Paris required photo identification matching the reservation name. The private tour guides had my cell phone as the only contact number. The restaurant bookings were confirmed through my email address with a 24-hour cancellation policy. I built this trip like I built everything else in my life, methodically, thoroughly, with multiple layers of security and control. Vanessa thought she was taking my gift and giving it to someone else. What she didn't understand was that the gift had never really been hers. It was an experience I created, funded, and controlled from start to finish. My phone rang. Unknown. Number. "Mr. Keller, this is Continental Airlines. We're calling to confirm your departure time for flight 447 to Paris." "Actually," I said, "I need to make some changes to that reservation." 20 minutes later, I had rerouted my ticket to a different flight. Same destination, different airline, leaving 3 hours later. The original seats I booked for Vanessa and me were now assigned to her and Alec, but my name remained on all. The supporting documentation they'd need in Europe. I called my assistant, Jessica. "I need you to book me a companion ticket on Lufthansa Flight 892 to Rome departing tonight." "Certainly, Mr. Keller. Should I ask who the second passenger will be?" I thought about my sister, Claire, who'd been telling me for years that I needed to take better care of myself, who divorced her cheating husband 5 years ago and rebuilt her life from scratch. "Claire Daniels," I said. "My sister. It's time she saw Europe. I didn't wait for Vanessa's plane to take off. I already knew how this story would end." The call came 8 hours later. I was in Rome's Fiumicino airport with Claire, sharing a bottle of Chianti while we waited for our connection to Florence. My phone displayed Vanessa's name, but I let it ring. She called again immediately. This time I answered. "Ethan." Her voice was tight, strained. "There's been some kind of mistake with the hotel reservation." "What kind of mistake?" "They're saying the room was canceled. The concierge is being incredibly rude. They won't honor the booking without the primary cardholder present." I took a sip of wine. Claire was watching me with raised eyebrows, but I kept my voice neutral. "That's strange. Did you show them the confirmation email?" "Of course I showed them the email. They said it doesn't matter. Something about company policy and fraud prevention." "Ethan, we're standing in the lobby with our luggage, and they're treating us like criminals." "Where's Alec?" A pause. "He's trying to book us another room, but everything's full. It's peak tourist season. Expensive time to travel." I said, "Ethan, this isn't funny. I need you to call them and straighten this out." "The number is—" "I'm in Italy," I interrupted. Silence. "Then what do you mean you're in Italy?" "Rome, actually. About to fly to Florence. Claire and I are having a wonderful time." The silence stretched. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Lower, more controlled. "You're supposed to be home." "Why would I be home? It's our anniversary trip." "But you're not." "We're not." She struggled for words. "You can't just take my sister on our anniversary trip. Your sister Claire is my sister. And this was never your trip, Vanessa. It was mine. I planned it, I paid for it, and now I'm taking it." "You bastard." The words came out like a hiss. "You deliberately sabotaged us." "I didn't sabotage anything. I simply took the trip I planned with someone who wanted to spend time with me. Alec and I are stranded here, do you understand that? We have nowhere to stay." Alex seems resourceful. I'm sure he'll figure something out. The credit card isn't working either. Which credit card? The travel card. You gave me, it's being declined everywhere. Oh, I said, as if just remembering. I suspended that card this morning. Security precaution, you understand? Claire was grinning now, making exaggerated thumbs-up gestures. I had to work to keep amusement out of my voice. Ethan! Vanessa's tone had shifted to something I hadn't heard in years. Pleading. This is crazy. We can work this out when you get home. But right now we need help. I need help. Please, I'm asking you to help me. For 14 years, I'd responded to that tone. The moment she softened her voice and asked for help, I'd moved mountains to give her what she wanted. Fixed. Problems, solved crises made things better. But sitting in that airport, watching travelers hurry past with their own stories and destinations, I realized something had shifted. The urgency I used to feel when she needed me was gone, replaced by something colder and cleaner. Vanessa, I said, 6 hours ago, you told me I was too boring for this trip. You said another man appreciated you more than I ever could. You replaced me with your personal trainer and expected me to just accept it. That's not... I didn't mean... You meant every word. And now you're in Paris with him, just like you wanted. Enjoy it. I hung up. Claire raised her wine glass to sisters who know when their brothers deserve better. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. My phone buzzed with a text. This isn't over. I deleted it without reading it twice. Claire had questions during our flight to Florence, but she waited until we were settled in our hotel room overlooking the Arno River to ask them. How long has this been going on? I was unpacking the suitcase I'd thrown together in 20 minutes, trying to remember if I'd brought enough shirts for a week in Italy. The affair? I don't know. Months, probably. No, not the affair. How long have you been planning this? I stopped folding clothes and looked at her. Claire had always been the smarter sibling, 3 years younger than me, but she could see through people. Since she was 16 when her ex-husband David started coming home late with weak excuses, she'd hired a private investigator within a week. When the divorce papers were filed, she already had copies of every relevant financial document and a clear strategy for keeping the house. I wasn't planning anything, I said. This morning, I thought I was taking my wife on our anniversary trip. Ethan. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her travel clothes. You don't accidentally cancel hotel reservations and freeze credit cards. You don't accidentally book your sister on a flight to Italy. You don't accidentally have documentation ready that keeps your soon-to-be ex-wife from accessing anything. I sat down across from her. What are you saying? I'm saying you've been preparing for this moment longer than you realize. Maybe not consciously, but you've been building walls around your finances, your business, your life, like you knew something was coming. She was right. Over the past year, I'd quietly moved most of our joint assets into business accounts that required both our signatures to access. I'd updated all my passwords, secured my client database, even had my attorney review our prenuptial agreement. At the time, I told myself it was just good business practice, protecting the company from potential liability. But maybe it was more than that. Remember when you asked me to be your emergency contact for the business accounts? Claire continued. That was 8 months ago. You said it was in case something happened to you, but Vanessa was your wife. She should have been the logical choice. 8 months ago, right around the time Vanessa started her personal training sessions. I think part of you knew, Claire said gently. Maybe not the specifics, but you knew something was wrong. You just didn't want to face it. My phone rang. Vanessa again. This time I declined the call immediately. There's something else, I said. 3 weeks ago, I found out she'd been using our joint credit card to pay for things. That didn't make sense. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel rooms in downtown San Diego when she was supposedly at the gym, gifts from jewelry stores I didn't recognize. You didn't confront her? I thought about it, but then I realized something. If I confronted her, she'd either lie or tell me the truth. If she lied, I'd know she was lying and nothing would change. If she told me the truth, our marriage would be over. So instead, you planned a trip that would force her to show her hand. I thought about that. Had I subconsciously set a trap, offering her the perfect opportunity to choose between her husband and her trainer, knowing which way she'd go? Maybe, I admitted. Maybe I needed to see it for myself, needed to stop living in the space between suspicion and certainty. Claire nodded. And now you know. Now I know. My phone buzzed with another text from Vanessa. I turned it face down without reading it. So, what happens next? Claire asked. I gazed out the window at the ancient city spreading below us. Now we enjoy Florence. The next morning, while Claire explored the Uffizi Gallery, I sat in our hotel's business center making phone calls I should have made years ago. First call, my attorney. Robert, it's Ethan Keller. I need to discuss divorce proceedings. I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan. Are we talking about an amicable separation? No, we're talking about adultery, misuse of joint assets, and protecting my business interests. I see. When you're ready to file, we'll need documentation, financial records, evidence of misconduct, asset valuation. I've been collecting records for months, and as for evidence, she's currently in Paris with her personal trainer, using what she thought was my money to fund their romantic getaway. Excellent. California is a no-fault state, but adultery can still impact asset division, especially if marital funds were used to support the affair. Second call, my business banker. Mr. Keller, how can I help you? I need to remove my wife as an authorized user on all Zentren Global. Accounts effective immediately. I also want to change all access codes and require additional verification for any transactions over $5,000. Of course. Should I also flag any attempts to access the accounts using her credentials? Yes, and send me a report of any. Attempted access. Third call, my accountant. Janet, I need a complete audit of all joint assets and any business expenses that might have been used for personal purposes over the past year. This sounds serious, Ethan. It is. I'm filing for divorce, and I need to know exactly what my wife has been spending on her boyfriend. Fourth call, the locksmith. I need all the locks changed on my house in Mission Hills today, if possible. Are you locked out, sir? No, I'm preventing someone else from getting in. By lunch, I had systematically dismantled every point of access Vanessa had to my life, bank accounts secured, business protected, house locks changed, and attorney retained. It felt like disconnecting a complicated machine, one wire at a time. Claire found me on the hotel terrace reading emails on my laptop. You look different, she said, settling into the chair across from me. Different how? Lighter, like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. She was right. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering where Vanessa was or what she was really doing. I wasn't analyzing her moods or trying to decode her text messages. I wasn't planning elaborate gestures to win back attention that had already been given to someone else. My phone rang, Vanessa for the 6th time that day. This time, I answered. Hello? Ethan? Thank God. We need to talk. About what? About this insanity you're pulling, stranding us in Paris, cutting off our money, playing these games. What games? You know exactly what games. This whole revenge fantasy you're acting out. Revenge? I looked at Claire, who was pretending not to listen. Vanessa, I'm sitting on a terrace in Florence, drinking excellent wine with my sister, watching the sunset over the Duomo. I'm not plotting revenge. I'm having the trip I planned with the wrong person. No, I said quietly. For the first time in a long time, I'm with exactly the right person. Ethan, I've changed the locks, I continued. Secured the accounts, contacted my attorney. By the time you get back to San Diego, you'll find divorce papers waiting. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I hung up and turned off my phone. Claire raised her wine glass to new beginnings. 3 months later, I found myself in my attorney's office while he reviewed the final divorce settlement. Vanessa had tried to contest it, claiming she deserved half of everything I'd built during our marriage, but California law was clear about one thing. When joint marital assets were used to fund an extramarital affair, the innocent spouse could seek reimbursement. Every expensive dinner she'd charged to our credit card while dining with Alec, every hotel room she'd booked for their afternoon encounters, every gift she'd bought him with money from our joint account, every cent I'd spent on her personal training sessions that had apparently included extra services. The final calculation, Robert said, sliding a document across his desk, showed misuse of marital assets totaling $47,000 over 8 months, $47,000, more than most people earned in a year, spent on an affair while she complained that I didn't appreciate her enough. As for her share of the house, given that I owned the property before our marriage and paid the mortgage entirely through business income, she would receive a minimal settlement, enough for a security deposit on an apartment. What? About Alec? I asked. Robert smiled. Interesting development there. According to our investigator, Mr. Alec Morrison has returned to his wife and children in Orange County. Apparently his European adventure with your ex-wife was just that, an adventure. He never had any intention of leaving his family. So Vanessa had destroyed our marriage for a man who never planned to stay with her. She traded 14 years of stability for a week in Paris with someone who saw her as entertainment. The papers are ready for your signature, Robert continued. Once filed, the divorce will be final in 6 months. I signed my name on each page, feeling nothing but relief. 6 months later, I returned to Italy, not for revenge, closure, or dramatic confrontation, but because I had fallen in love with Florence during that first trip with Claire. I had sold the house in Mission Hills and bought a small apartment overlooking the Arno River. Zentren Global was thriving. Freed from the constant drain of trying to satisfy someone who could never be satisfied, I poured my energy back into building something meaningful. 3 new clients, expanded services, and a team that respected what we were creating together. I was reading on my terrace when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. It was Vanessa, still trying to provoke some kind of reaction. I deleted the message without responding and returned to my book. The truth was, I was happy, not the forced happiness I had tried to maintain during the final years of our marriage, constantly convincing myself that things were fine. This was real happiness, the kind that came from waking up each morning without wondering what mood someone else would be in, what crisis I'd need to solve, or what elaborate gesture I'd need to plan to earn approval. Claire visited every few months. She'd started dating again, a widowed professor who treated her like she was worth listening to. We would have dinner at the little trattoria down the street from my apartment, talking about books, business, and the strange relief of building. A life based on what you actually wanted instead of what someone else demanded. I never saw Vanessa again. I heard she'd moved to Los Angeles, working at another gallery, trying to rebuild the life she had thrown away for a man who never intended to catch it. Sometimes the best revenge was simply living well,